up, guys? Welcome to another episode of SpeedSim. My name is Andre.
And I'm eHouse.
And today we're just going to go kind of more of an overview / first impressions of the XL Burst from AIrsoft Innovations.
Now that we've actually gotten to, live demo them a few times, as opposed to our first impressions thing at SHOT Show.
Right. Which was great at SHOT Show. So once again, if you guys haven't seen
big
that video,
thanks to AIrsoft Innovations, especially for Z-Shot having us to their house party. It was pretty lit. So
so if you guys haven't watched our first impressions at SHOT Show, if you haven't watched that video yet, go search for that after we're done here, and you can.
It's on our SHOT Show 2017 playlist.
There you go. All right. So first impressions, I have used this a couple times just out in my range, in my room, kind of just seeing what the limits are and how well this thing actually goes off.
Same thing here.
And
we haven't used these in game, bear in mind.
These are not.
We've kind of been testing them in our own environments.
Yeah, just to kind of, I just want to see what the threshold is, how hard you have to throw it, and what environments is it going to work well for, and what environments is not going to really work all that well. So starting off, they go off quite reliably.
Generally speaking.
I do have to say they do go off quite reliably. It's not like you have to do some sort of guessing game like with the Hikatsu Thunderbees, where it kind of it's one of those things
sometimes
like you don't know, you might get a dud. And with this one, I feel like you're going to have a little bit more of a reliability as far as you're going to know it's going to go off. Now, one thing to bear in mind is if you play in a lot of sandy areas, a lot of people in California who play in some sort of the outdoor field that are more sandy, or if you're in Florida and it's sandy.
Or if you're in a grassy area.
Or grassy
mud.
with dirt or something like that. You want to throw this at a building. So if you know that guy is in a building, you have to chuck it at the wall and then let it fall, because if you just chuck it straight into the ground, this is not going to go off. And I tested this quite extensively in my room, where I got a carpet and I kind of just lobbed it into my in my room area. It didn't go off just because of the nature of it being so squishy with the underpad and layment and whatever on my carpet. It just won't go off because it absorbs a lot of the throw that I tossed it at. And again, I didn't chuck it. I just kind of underthrew it a little bit.
Well, underhand throw, because most fields don't want you chucking stuff overhand.
But I kind of give it a little
especially
bit of
once this CNC'd aluminum body, chuck that at someone's head.
This thing is quite weighty, so you don't want to hurt anybody. But regardless, I underhanded just a little bit just to see how high I would have to go in order for it to go off. And if you're going to underhand it and you're just going to do a light lob, you want to be at least 6 feet or above in order for it to go off. Because if you just do it, 4 feet or under, it's not going to go off. The environment is not going to let you do it. So I would recommend you toss it against the wall and then let it fall. And it takes, a good second or two for it to actually burst.
That is a thing to bear in mind. Now, this is an impact grenade, but it's not like, say, an M203 in a video game, or hell, even in real life, where it hits and it blows up.
Yeah.
This is, it hits, which causes the hammer, or I guess that's the firing mechanism to go. And when the firing mechanism goes, it releases the gas. The gas fills up in the bottom here with the burst disc, and then the burst disc bursts and makes the noise. So that takes a second or two. So it's not an immediate hits the wall, goes off.
No.
Now, that could be useful for if you're trying to bounce it around a corner.
Yep.
You still got a second or two for it to bounce back the other way or back at you, depending on how crappy your throw is.
Make a U-turn or something if you're trying to hit against the wall and hit again, and then get to the person you're trying to get, whatever. You have a good
Halo
second.
plasma grenade stuff right there.
You got an extra second or two for you to do the job that you need to get done.
But that's another thing mentioning is, like you said, against hard surfaces, this will go off every time.
It's fantastic.
You could drop it from 6 inches on a hard surface, and it's like,
Which I have tested. I do have a concrete surface that I can just drop it. So I have tested. It does go off reliably like that.
But on carpet and soft surfaces, it's a bit more of a pain, just because the amount of impact that's absorbed.
Yeah.
Other than that, one of the other things I would recommend is, in terms of reliability, this thing needs decent pressure gas.
Yep.
I don't think M130 or HFC 134A, I don't think that would work in these. Even like a half-empty green gas can was often not enough. Indoors, where it was warm, in my house, a half full green gas can or partially empty green gas can, often the 2 burst discs that they recommend you put in the bottom of this, they would bulge out, get right to the point of bursting and not burst.
Yeah, it would kind of pop off to the side and release all the gas out the side. It would make a pop.
It wouldn't even do that.
It
wouldn't even do that on mine. What it would do on mine is, because I screwed this thing really tight, with my man hands. So
I don't want to break it.
I do. I wanted to break it. I wanted to see if I could break it. I didn't. It didn't break. But what I did get was a couple of times where, like I said, it would burst out like it wanted to break and wanted to make the pop, but it wouldn't. And then if I like, hit it with my finger or, kicked the burst disc or...
You kicked it.
Yeah, I would kick it.
Fuck it.
So then it would go off, but it wouldn't go off on its own just from that. So use a really full green gas can or use a pretty full propane canisters. I mean, obviously AIrsoft Innovations, they make the propane adapter. They probably want you using propane in this thing for, a little more pressure.
Both Eric and I use green gas because we like green gas pistols, so that's kind of more of...
I use green gas more in my pistols at this point. But that's something to bear in mind is you're going to want a decently high pressure gas for this, and you're going to want a pretty full gas can of whatever you're using. Also, try one burst disc.
Yeah, it would probably be better with one burst disc because two makes it a lot more rigid. And what I've noticed when I toss mine is it would bulge out, like he said, but mine would just pop off the... I don't even know what you call it.
The inner ring.
The inner ring, and it would bulge out and then pop off completely and not burst, and then all the gas would shoot out. So it would sound like it went off, but then on further inspection, the thing was just kind of sticking out there, and I could actually reuse them because it didn't go off. So I just stuck it back in there, and at that point, it actually worked. So it was a really weird kind of test. I have no idea. Like you said, maybe it's probably because the gas can I was using, again, was half empty. It was warm, but it didn't really go off.
Boy, and you got to really tighten this thing down.
Yeah,
you
I didn't
get on these threads
so
to really make sure that goes.
Most likely, what his had done would have done to mine as well if I would have tightened it up, but I didn't tighten it all the way down because I didn't even know because I thought you just kind of screw it on a little bit and it'll work, but no, I guess not.
And then so I would try one burst disc. Now one burst disc isn't as loud because these things are rated at like 125 decibels with both burst discs. Mm-hmm. But if you're having trouble with reliability, I would try one burst disc just because that's still going to be, I think it was like 80 some decibels even with one burst disc, which is just fine. Yeah. Quality of the grenade though, like in terms of build quality, I mean this thing is stupid solid. It's all CNC'd aluminum. So
but
I don't
again,
think you're
bear in mind on the field you don't want to be tossing this at people.
No. You don't want to throw this overhand.
It's like throwing one.
I bet if I threw this into the drywall over there, it would go into the drywall.
Oh, it will,
and it
for
would
sure.
go through.
For sure.
But I mean the quality of it generally seems pretty good. I mean I think it's just like painted for the finish.
Yeah,
which
it's probably
anodized. That's gonna fall off and flake off eventually. That's the nature of the beast. Now actually using this guy is really simple. There's gonna be a million goddamn videos on the internet of actually putting this thing together. So I'm just doing a real quick and dirty demo. There's a divot here. You push up the hammer or striker or whatever you want to call it, and you ledge it where the divot is. Then you put the pin through the two holes that hold the striker in place. Bam. Screw that back on.
If it went off, you got to push on the inside in order.
I just did. Yeah, I just did that. Then you're going to open the bottom. Push the inner gas shuttle into its reset position. Fill that with gas in the fill valve here that is covered by a rubber band. Then you're going to put your two burst discs in this little ledge here. Screw this thing shut really, really tight. And then,
do like me.
Yeah, and then you are going to be ready to set this thing off. That's how you set this thing.
It's really easy.
Yeah.
Takes like
another point I would kind of like to contend though is I'm not sure I'm in love with the fill valve placement.
Personally, I'm not even in love with the fact they're using a rubber band.
Yeah,
That seems a little like they're like last minute, like, damn, we need to cover this somehow.
Yeah, I didn't manage to break it just in my very limited testing, but I have a feeling if you start throwing this thing in concrete a lot with this rubber band over it,
the rubber band's going to get completely messed up. Especially rolling around in concrete, it's going to tear it up.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty sketchy. So maybe what I would recommend is covering it with some tape, honestly, and then just peeling the tape off between uses.
Like duct tape or something.
This rubber band is pretty sketchy. I wish they would have found a way to either recess the fill valve with like an extra bit of aluminum ring around here or something like that. Just having that open brass fill valve with just that rubber band covering it is
I can see potential for hitting it really hard against concrete and you're going to bulge it out and this is not going to work and you have to replace it like a bunch of times.
Yeah, so... and that's another thing. AIrsoft Innovations, they generally have been good about offering rebuild kits for all their grenades. These are no exception from what I understand. They're going to have the full rebuild kits available for them all the time, and they're very good to talk to. So I'm sure if you email them, if you need anything, if you have a problem, they'll be able to help you out. These are cheap though to use. They're $40 MSRP, I believe, for the actual starter kit.
Like that. So in the box from AIrsoft Innovations, it's pretty cool. You get 3 of the rubber bands, so to cover up the sketchy.
Yeah, so when that gets shredded, you can replace it.
They give you 3, so I mean, which is good. But again, I wish they didn't have to do that. You get 30 replacement discs. They will be selling them separately, obviously.
It's going to be 60 for $9. Yep. So this is a lot cheaper per use than a Thunder Bee.
Yeah, so they're pretty cheap. You get some silicone oil, like as with normal AIrsoft Innovations products. You always get a little nice bottle of silicone so you can take care of your green gas products. You get an extra pin, which is always great. Thunder Bees don't.
Nope.
You have to buy those separately.
And you get some extra stickers.
Well, yeah, I was getting to that. And then you get some extra little, they're more like ID tags.
Yeah.
Because they do have instructions on there as well, and they have a little place where you can put your name on there. So if, you're playing in like an indoor and you probably won't be able to see the blue, you have orange, and you also have black, so if you want to be really tactical.
Yeah, if you want to be super stealthy.
Yeah, you can put a black one on. Wow, that is intense. I've never seen a company on skating. Anyways, so that's what comes in the box. AIrsoft Innovation is pretty good about giving you extra stuff inside the box.
I think that'll come with patches too, or at least some of them do.
Yeah, some of them do. I know that ours did, but I don't want to,
Yeah, I don't want to promise anyone anything.
I don't think people are going to get patches included with their. So yours might or might not come with a patch, much like the Firehawk, whether or not you got a black amplifier or not.
So
it's always sketchy.
So that's our impressions of how the grenade works and what it comes with. So, final thoughts. Is this a contender on the airsoft grenade market?
AIrsoft Innovations has always been a contender. Their stuff has always worked. Some of them work more better than others. This one, I don't know if it's a Thunder Bee killer because of the nature of,
just because it doesn't go off outside that well.
Especially cold weather. I mean, with the Hikatsu, it's CO2, so it'll go off no matter what because it is cold, or can perform well in the cold. This is green gas, so green gas kind of is like one of those things as you guys know with your green gas mags for your pistols, you might get 1 or 2 shots. You might not even get this thing to go off because it's cold. Again, it depends on how cold it is. Here in New York, it's pretty cold, so it probably won't go off. But if you're, like in California or something where it's a little bit warmer, but it's still kind of cold,
or if you're indoors and they've got the heat running,
or
if
not,
running,
or not,
yeah,
it could be just
depends on where you're.
So I don't know if this is a Thunder Bee killer, but it is a contender for summertime.
It's a contender for, here, if you throw it into a building and hit the side of a building.
Yep.
Like at River City, where it's grass on the ground, but hardwood buildings, it'll work great there. If you're indoors or in a concrete environment, it'll work great there.
And if you go into large missile events and they have concrete or buildings.
This would work great at Faded Giant.
Yep.
But they allow pyro at Faded Giant, which is even more reliable. So it depends on your needs.
Yeah.
It's cheap. And if you're playing at places where this will go off reliably, I think it's a great option.
Yeah, for sure. It's cheap.
Yeah. It's not perfect.
No.
Really, no airsoft grenade is. The only ones that are perfect can still probably blow your hand off because they're pyro.
and they're real.
Yeah, so that's the problem, is that those aren't perfect either.
Now, do you think it's the Thunder Bee killer?
I don't think it's the Thunder Bee killer, but I think it's...
They made a very bold statement saying...
Yeah, I don't think it's the Thunder Bee killer, but I do think that it's a very good option.
Yeah.
The Thunder Bee still just has a couple of unique advantages over it.
Being able to use in the cold. I don't think this will work in the cold.
And outdoors, because it's not relying on an impact to go off.
Yeah, that's true. So if you play mostly outdoors and there's not a lot of cover to throw it at, I don't think this is going to be your best option.
Yep. But other than that...
Overall, we're going to do a more in-depth review when we get to use it a little bit more on the airsoft field. This was just our initial impressions, being able to use it in different environments, soft areas, concrete areas, and then just overall performance-wise, outdoors or indoors.
Yep.
So don't take this, take this with a grain of salt, because these are just initial impressions. But we'll come back later, probably in a month or two, when we actually get to use them and when we actually play, and we'll kind of go in more in depth and see what we actually found. I don't think this rubber band's going to work.
Yeah. Fun behind the scenes fact, the reason we're even putting this up is because I'm going to be gone next week for work. I do have a day job. It sucks.
Yeah.
But But hey, I hope you enjoyed this video.
Alright guys, this has been the overview of the XL Burst by AIrsoft Innovations.
Thank you very much to those guys for giving us these. And
always appreciate it.
Yeah, and again for the house party.
That was great.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks for watching. My name is Andre.
And I'm eHouse.
See you later.
Peace.